I never thought my family's humiliation would force me to walk away from a $900 million deal. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The air was thick with tension, and whispers danced around the room like ghosts. It started with the phone call, the one that shattered my world. My mom was on the other end, her voice trembling, barely above a whisper. "They found out, Alex. The news is everywhere." My heart raced. I was in a sleek boardroom, surrounded by polished suits and business charts gleaming under fluorescent lights. But all I could think about was my family. My stomach twisted. I remembered the laughter around our dinner table, the warmth of my dad's embrace. Now, all I felt was a churning darkness. Rumors of my family's disgrace had spread like wildfire. My father's missteps, the ones he buried deep, had surfaced. I could see the headlines flash in my mind. "The billionaires fall from grace." The laughter of my peers echoed strangely, pity mingled with disdain. My knuckles turned white as I gripped the edge of the table. I fought back tears, but they surged, hot and burning, threatening to spill. My brother's face flashed before me. The pride he once carried was crumbling. "Friends?" They stood in silence, a mix of concern and disbelief etched on their faces. I could see the judgment looming. The betrayal stung sharper than any knife. Then came the decision. The deal worth nearly $1 billion was on the table. I could change everything. I could pull us out of the darkness, but at what cost? I felt my heart pounding, echoing in my ears. Is it worth sacrificing my family's dignity? I thought. I could see my father's disappointment reflecting in every corner of the room. The weight of my choices pressed down, suffocating. Suddenly, a loud crash outside broke through my thoughts. I turned, startled, as the door swung open. A well-dressed stranger barged in, eyes wild, and shouted, "You have to see this." The tension in the air shifted. All eyes turned to the newcomer. Had something changed? What now? My pulse raced even faster. What had the stranger uncovered? My gut twisted with fear, anticipation, and an unmistakable sense of urgency. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The stranger's presence felt electric, a charged energy that disrupted the heavy atmosphere lingering in the boardroom. "You need to see this," he repeated, his voice trembling with urgency. I locked eyes with him, searching for any hint of a solution hidden behind the wildness. "See what?" I asked, my heart pounding in my chest as I felt the heat of my colleague's stares against my back. "Heard there was an accident at the estate. Someone has been hurt," he said, barely breathing as he spoke. My mind reeled. The estate? My home? Thoughts cascaded through me. My parents, my brother. My heart raced with fear. Without another word, I turned on my heel and dashed out of the boardroom, adrenaline propelling me forward. The polished tiles beneath my feet felt unsteady, grounding me less with each hurried step. I needed to reach them. I needed to make sure everything was okay. The elevator ride felt like an eternity. I stood, hands trembling against the steel walls, resentment and anguish fighting for dominance in my heart. As I stepped into the chaos outside, I was met with a jarring scene. Emergency vehicles lined the driveway, red and blue lights bathing everything in a surreal glow. I swallowed hard, pushing through the crowd that gathered as though drawn by some grotesque magnetism to witness fear and despair. "Alex," I heard a voice call out, breaking through the murmur of disbelief. My brother emerged from the herd, his face pale and drawn, eyes wide with concern. Thank God you're here. It's Dad. I didn't need to hear more. My legs carried me past him, weaving through the throng of onlookers. I burst through the disorienting labyrinth of bodies, forcing myself forward, my heartbeat thundering in my ears. The sight of my father sprawled on the ground, surrounded by paramedics, froze me in place. Terror gripped my throat like a vice. Get back! A medic barked as he lifted my father's arm, the dread in his voice sharp enough to cut through the air. I backed away, my breath hitched, heart racing as I fought the rising wave of panic. Then, in an unexpected moment, I caught the eye of a paramedic, a woman whose determined expression seemed to carry a sense of purpose. She met my gaze for a moment, then shouted to her colleagues, "We need to keep him stable. His vitals are dropping." The world around me blurred. My father's face, so familiar and comforting, was stark against the chaos engulfing us. "No," I whispered, willing time to stop. I thought back to yesterday, the mundane conversation over breakfast, the way he joked and teased. The laughter felt like a distant echo now, a soft memory teetering on the brink of oblivion. I heard my brother's voice behind me, cracking with anguish. What if he doesn't make it? The question hung in the air, thick and suffocating, a fear I couldn't entertain. Not now. Suddenly, the world shifted. A figure pushed through the crowd, an old family friend, Mrs. Henderson. She wrung her hands together, her brow creased with worry, and caught my eye. "Alex," she said gently, her voice a whisper beneath the clamor, "we're all here for you and your family. No matter what happens." Her kindness wrapped around me like a lifeline. "Thank you," I murmured, the weight of her compassion settling on me like a blanket on a cold night. There was still hope. Maybe even amidst the chaos, kindness would shine through. Maybe there would be light again. But just as I began to summon a flicker of optimism, another paramedic stepped forward, his voice somber as he relayed, "We're going to need to move him now." My breath hitched again. It felt as if my heart shattered anew, fracturing beneath the weight of that moment. I turned back to my brother, only to find him staring at the ground, tears flooding his eyes. This couldn't be happening. "We need to call Mom," I whispered. The words felt like an anchor, the gravity of the situation dragging me below. As my brother fumbled for his phone, a commotion erupted nearby. A reporter, driven by a hunger for a story, pushed through the crowd, microphone in hand. "How does it feel to see your father in this state, knowing the disgrace hanging over your family?" he shouted. The question cut deeper than any blade I'd ever known. The way the crowd's whispers shifted, curiosity mingled with sympathy, was a reminder of my family's fall from grace. I clenched my fists, the heat of anger rising within me like lava, ready to burst. But even in that moment of anguish, something else stirred within me, a resolve, quiet and fierce. "We'll face it together," I vowed under my breath, just as they wheeled my father towards the ambulance. And as the doors of that vehicle closed, sealing off that fragile thread of hope, I felt the ground beneath me shift, a new fear creeping into my mind. What if this wasn't just an accident? What if there were deeper truths buried beneath the surface of my father's missteps? Just as that unsettling thought settled in the pit of my stomach, my phone vibrated in my pocket. I pulled it out, and the screen lit up with a name that sent chills racing through me, an unknown number. Knowing I had to answer, I swiped the screen, but my heart stopped when a voice on the other end said, "Alex, you need to listen closely." With every word that followed, it felt as if the ground I stood upon began to crumble, pulling me deeper into the abyss of uncertainty and revelation. The air in the ambulance was thick with the insistent beeping of machinery and the scent of antiseptics. I sat helplessly in the back, my brother next to me, both of us holding tightly to the small semblance of hope that maybe the paramedics could work a miracle. My heart raced faster than the ambulance itself, every bump on the road feeling like the world crashing back down around me. "Alex," my brother whispered, eyeing the medics as if they were wizards casting spells to save our father. What if this is it? What if I shot him a look, desperate to silence the fears spinning wildly in his mind? Stop it. We can't think like that right now. We just need to focus on him. My voice trembled, revealing the cracks in my carefully constructed facade. Silence stretched like an elastic band, taut and ready to snap. We were suspended between worry and the faint whisper of hope, the rolling rhythm of the ambulance both a comfort and a torment. I glanced at my father, lying there, an uncharacteristic stillness marking his face. Tall and strong, a man who had weathered storms and emerged unscathed. How could he be reduced to this? The paramedic leaned over him, applying pressure to a bandage on his arm. She was the same one from the estate, her face a mask of focus. "We're almost at the hospital, sir," she spoke soothingly, though her eyes betrayed a flicker of concern. "Just hold on for us, okay?" "Dad, please," I whispered, my voice cracking. I could feel the weight of my unspoken fears pressing on my chest as I clung to my brother's hand. "You've got to fight." Minutes felt like hours as we rode, the city outside flashing by in a blur of neon and distant sirens. And just when the shaking of the ambulance quieted, signaling our arrival, I felt the crushing wave of unknowns crash over me again. My thoughts turned to our family's situation, the scandals that had clawed at our reputation, sudden layoffs, legal battles that felt more personal than otherwise. The questions of who might benefit from our misfortunes nagged at me relentlessly. As we rushed into the emergency room, my heart racing with every hurried footstep. My mother arrived, breathless and frantic. Her eyes were wild with dread, tearing through the crowded space as she called for us. When our eyes met, the unshed tears shimmered like a beacon in her gaze. She quickly rushed to us, enveloping us in a fierce embrace. It was a moment of solace amidst chaos, but the comfort felt so temporary, each second suffused with urgent uncertainty. "And Mom," I stammered, the gravity of the situation rushing back like a tidal wave. "What if he doesn't make it?" "Stop that," she replied firmly, pulling back to look me in the eye, her shaky breath betraying her own fear. "We stick together, no matter what happens." Just then, a doctor appeared, mask pulled down under his chin, his gaze piercing through the multitudinous emotions swirling within me. "Are you the family?" he asked kindly, even as his voice carried the heaviness of unspoken truths. "Yes, yes," my mother replied, stepping forward. "What is wrong? How is he?" "Your husband has sustained serious injuries," he began slowly, his voice laced with clinical distance. "We need to run further tests." But he hesitated, and I felt my heart sink into an abyss. "There may be complications. You should prepare for the worst." A chill swept through the room, freezing everything in its wake. I reached out for my mother's hand, our fingers intertwining as if we could hold ourselves together against the impending shattering. But as I looked around the sterile room, my mind spiraled back to that ominous phone call. I still gripped my phone in my pocket, the unknown caller lingering in the back of my mind like a dark shadow. "Mom," I said gently when the moment dulled just enough for me to catch a breath, I need to step out for a moment." She nodded, though confusion flickered across her face. I slipped away, my heart hammering, the need for answers driving me forward. Sitting alone in a dimly lit waiting area, I forced myself to take deep breaths to ground myself in a reality that felt surreal. I pulled my phone from my pocket, the number from the call still fresh. Did I really want to know what they had to say? But I knew I had to answer it. This was bigger than me or my fears, I realized. Hesitantly, I pressed the call icon and put the phone to my ear. "Alex," the voice greeted, its tone disconcertingly familiar. "You need to know what happened at the estate. Was just an accident. There's more at stake here than you realize." As the word sank in, I felt my stomach twist with a new kind of fear and apprehension that felt dangerous, lurking in the depths of my mind like a predator. I couldn't process the implications of this new bombshell, but I woke one truth to life within me. I would have to fight for my family, not just against the impending loss, but against whatever shadows were plotting just out of sight. And as I absorbed the weight of the revelations, a single thought ripped through the fog of uncertainty. My father's life was hanging by a thread, and there were forces beyond my understanding that threatened to unravel everything I thought I knew. The clock chirped ominously. I had little time to reconcile this internal turmoil with the world outside waiting for me. Yet as indomitable doubt loomed, a flame of fierce determination ignited anew as I prepared to return to my family. The time for grappling with shadows was almost here. I stepped back into the fluorescent-lit emergency room, the hum of tension settling onto my shoulders like an unwelcome cloak. The chaos outside the operating room felt muted compared to the storm rage brewing within me. As I returned, I scanned the room, looking for my brother and mother, but the emotional weight pressing on me felt almost suffocating now. They sat together, huddled close in an unforgiving sea of austere hospital furniture. My brother's head rested against my mother's shoulder, their silence a fragile thread woven tight with worry. I could see her hands trembling, twined around the frayed orange sweater one my father had once worn, bringing warmth despite the chill that had settled into her bones. The stark contrast between the woman I had known and this shadow of herself cut deeper than I expected. I approached cautiously, reeling with the implications of the call I had just received. "What did the doctor say?" I asked, striving to keep my voice steady, though my heart, like a caged bird, fluttered anxiously against my ribcage. "He is stable for now," my mother replied, her voice thick and drawn out as if every word was a luxury she could scarcely afford. The relief that momentarily washed over me was dangerously fleeting, as layers of uncertainty clung like shadows in the corners of my mind. "They're doing everything they can." "And how long?" I dared to ask, unsure if I really wanted the answer. My mother's gaze drifted, unfocused, as if she were looking beyond me into a distant memory. "It's hard to say. They're running tests." She inhaled sharply. "But we can't afford to lose him, Alex. We just can't." The fringe of her grip tightened around my hand as she spoke, her knuckles white and fragile. I met my brother's eyes, and he gave me a small, weak nod of encouragement, as if trying to push me forward into whatever choices lay ahead. And then unexpectedly amidst the sorrow, I felt a presence beside me. A nurse approached, her warm smile a breath of fresh air in the oppressive atmosphere. "There will be updates soon," she reassured us softly, echoing the doctor's calm, though her eyes shimmered with genuine empathy. "And if you need anything, coffee, snacks, I can help with that. You need to take care of yourselves too." I could scarcely remember the last time anyone had thought of our comforts during this chaos, and her kindness felt like a balm to my rapid heart. I managed to choke out a short thank you, the pitch of my voice betraying the emotional rubble I felt beneath the surface. "Please, take a break," my brother urged softly, his voice low yet fierce, as if summoning strength from deep within. "I'll stay with Mom. We'll be okay." I hesitated, feeling torn from the electric pulse of my family's anguish. But I understood his look. He needed me to step away, if only for a moment, to gather what little strength remained within me. I squeezed my mother's hand, promising to be back soon, and reluctantly wandered down the sterile corridor, away from the suffocating tension. As I walked, the muted sounds of the hospital faded into a dull background noise, and I looked at a series of photographs lining the walls, each one holding the moments of human connection, journeys taken, stories woven. I found myself lingering before an image of a family in a park, a father lifting a laughing child into the air, the sheer joy radiating between them like rings of sunlight. Suddenly, the buzzing of my phone broke through my reverie, pulling me back into reality. It was a message from the unknown caller, the implications of their words wading back into my consciousness. Curiosity and dread settled together like dark clouds. "Alex, time is running out. You need to understand who and what is behind this." The finality of the words struck like a hammer, sending chills racing down my spine. Who was this person? What were they trying to tell me? And more importantly, what additional threats hung in the air like a storm poised to break? In the moment that followed, I felt the push and pull of emotions intertwined with desperation and fear. I had assumptions, instincts, but no clear answers. As I stood there, faced with the unknown, I couldn't shake the anxiety twisting inside me. This revelation promised nothing but pain. Resolute and inspired by the kindness I had recently experienced, I decided I had to uncover the truth and protect my family, no matter the cost. But how much more would we have to endure before any relief rolled in like a tide? Returning to the waiting area with new purpose, I caught sight of my family, wrapped in the protective arms of love. But even there, caution loomed. As I stepped forward, the clenching of my gut intensified, a harbinger of something deeper yet to surface. And then I saw it, a figure in the doorway, a familiar face twisted with conflicting emotions, its presence manifesting a wave of disbelief and dread. The past had returned. The figure stepped into the fluorescent haze of the waiting area, and my heart dropped into a chasm of panic. It was Clara, my estranged sister, the one person I hadn't expected to see here, not in this desolate place where joy went to wither and die. Her expression was a storm of nerves and regret, caught between guilt and determination as she scanned the room for the family she had walked away from. "Alex," she whispered, a plea tangled in the hushed air, her eyes locking onto mine, with a mix of vulnerability and something akin to dread. "Why are you here?" I asked, the edge in my voice slicing through the agonizing silence. Part of me wanted to reach out and embrace her, yet a stronger instinct told me to keep my distance, like touching something fragile that could shatter at the slightest pressure. "I heard," she stammered, her words tense and uncertain. "I had to come. I didn't know how else to. Did you come to gloat? To remind us how you chose leaving over family?" The words fell from my lips before I could rein them in, cutting off the breath in the room. I glanced back at my brother and mother, who were now watching the exchange with wide eyes, mirrors of disbelief. "God, no. I came to help, okay?" Clara's voice trembled, raw and exposed, but beneath the pain was an earnestness I hadn't anticipated. "I couldn't stand it anymore. I had to see if you were okay." As I stood there grappling with anger and the flickers of hope, I caught a glimpse of the small woman huddled in her grief beside my brother. My mother was locked in some unseen battle of her own, her stiff posture conveying a withheld flood of emotion. I could feel the storm brewing inside me intensifying, but as I looked at Clara, I also felt the quiet tether of family pulling at my heartstrings. "Help? What can you possibly offer?" I ventured, the skepticism clear in my tone, my mind racing back to a childhood filled with her abandonment. "I know things," she replied, her voice regaining a measure of strength. "I can explain the threats, the whispers you've been hearing." "What are you talking about?" The incredulity tinged my voice as I fought to keep my composure. "You think now is the time for games?" But she shook her head vehemently. "No games. There are people tied to Dad's business, people who want to let it go. I didn't want to believe it, but they've been watching us." "Watching you?" My breath caught, and I felt as if the air had been sucked from the room. Memories of whispering phone calls, late-night discussions closed off, as if an unspoken tension hung in the air, began to resurface. Suddenly, the shadows surrounding our family felt darker, more tangible. "Why should I believe anything you say?" I managed, gripping the back of a nearby chair to steady myself. Clara took a hesitant step closer, her expression earnest and sorrowful. "Because I don't want to lose you again, Alex. I know I made mistakes, but we can't afford to ignore this. It might be too late." I could see my mother and brother watching intently, their unspoken fears swirling around us like dust in the still air. I felt an overwhelming urge to protect my family, from the waves of betrayal that seemed intent on crashing down upon us. The weight of decision perched heavily on my shoulders, like a guillotine of doubt ready to drop. "So what is the plan?" I asked, surprising myself with the grit that allowed me to take that step toward vulnerability. "If there is something out there, we need to know." Clara nodded, the determination in her eyes kindling a flicker of warmth amid the icy tension. "We need to gather information, speak to the right people. But we'll have to tread carefully. They can get violent, and not just with threats." As her words settled in, the sound of Doctor's footsteps echoed ominously down the corridor, and every muted heartbeat felt more pronounced. The urgency of our situation loomed large, but so did the shadows of our fractured past. And just then, a doctor emerged from the operating room, his solemn face a harbinger of news. I could feel the air thicken, each breath becoming a laborious effort. As I steeled myself for what he might say, "Alex, can I speak to you for a moment?" he called, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. My heart thrummed wildly against my chest, uncertainty washing over me as I shared a frantic glance with my mother and brother. "I'll be right back," I said, trying to keep my tone reassuring despite the tempest brewing inside me. As I followed the doctor down the corridor, my mind swirled with questions. Was Clara's return a beacon of hope or a portent of deeper dangers? The chaos felt infinite, and amid it all, the realization hit I would have to confront my family's darkest secrets, tackle the perils that lay ahead, not just for their sake, but for my own redemption. Without a doubt, the truth would either save us or dismantle what little remained of our fragile connection. And just as I readied myself for whatever news awaited, my phone vibrated in my pocket, a new message from the unknown number, a palpable sense of dread rising like bile in my throat. "Alex, hurry. They know you're asking questions." My breath caught in my throat as the world around me shifted. In that moment, time stretched, and I was faced with the choice between confronting the past and diving headfirst into an uncertain future, knowing full well that stepping forward could tear our family apart or, maybe, bring us back together. The doctor led me to a small, private conference room, the sterile white walls offering no comfort as my insides twisted with apprehension. He motioned for me to sit, and the faint click of the door locking behind us echoed like a gunshot in the enclosed space. My heart beat like a war drum, drowning out the doctor's voice, which spoke in clipped tones about procedures and complications that felt distant as my mind spiraled with Clara's presence and the threatening messages. "You want to know how she is doing?" he began, though it wasn't a question. "This may be more complicated than we anticipated. She came in with multiple injuries, and we're still assessing the damage." I nodded slowly, a part of me bracing for impact, while another part fervently wished for the strength to process whatever came next. The doctor's eyes softened, perhaps recognizing the strain etched across my furrowed brow. "We're doing our best, but there's a chance she may not wake up, Alex. If she does, there will be a long road ahead." A long road. The phrase clung to me like a suffocating shroud. In my heart, the enormity of this situation began to weigh me down as realization washed over me with bitter clarity. I might lose her. The thought resonated with the shame of past arguments, of neglect, and all the unspoken words that had left us estranged. "Thank you for being honest," I managed to say, though my voice trembled, betraying the delicate balance between hope and despair. "Is there anything we can do?" The doctor offered no immediate answers, and the uncertainty pressed against my chest like a lead weight. "Just be here, support her when she wakes if she wakes." I stepped into the silence of the waiting room, feeling like an intruder in my own family. Clara was there, shifting uneasily from foot to foot, both hurt and hopeful in my eyes. My mother had pulled herself into an emotional shell, her face drawn tight in fear and helplessness. Meanwhile, my brother, usually so solid, now looked fragile, as though the gravity of impending loss might force his very spirit to shatter. "Did the doctor say anything?" Clara asked, her voice breaking from the strain of the moment. I took a moment, searching each face, feeling the chasm of lost time reverberate in the tear-soaked air. "We have to brace for the worst," I replied, choking on the words. "We need to pull together, to be stronger than the situation." The gravity of my statement hung in the air, an emotional rallying cry filled with urgency. My mother put a hand to her mouth, tears glistening like unpolished gems in her eyes, but Clara stepped closer, that familiar fire igniting behind her gaze. "I know we've all been through hell," but Clara hesitated, her voice gaining strength. "We can't let this tear us apart. We need to be a family again, even if it scares us." The desperation in her tone struck a chord within me. Those burned bridges we were too afraid to cross became tangible. There was something about the sincerity in Clara's eyes, something flickering not just the regrets of the past, but the possibility of a path forward. The thought overwhelmed me. Could I really reconcile with her? Before I could answer, a flash of color caught my attention. My phone buzzed again, and the dread returned with vengeance. I pulled it from my pocket, heart racing as I glanced at yet another message from the unknown number. "Don't trust her. You have no idea what she is capable of." My blood ran cold. Clara was right there, speaking to the very heart of what it meant to be family, while looming shadows whispered secrets through the air like daggers aimed straight at my trust. I glanced up, my pulse pounding in my throat, fighting against a tide of anger and confusion. "Who is it?" Clara asked, her brows knitting in concern, sensing my sudden tension. My mother and brother, too, leaned in, tension thickening the air, the weight of our shared grief almost palpable. I hesitated, searching for the right choice. Do I unburden my fears on them, or do I protect them, guarding my secrets as we teetered on the edge of uncertainty? My throat was tight, suffocated by a need to protect them under the sanctions of what they didn't know. Suddenly, the door swung open, and a nurse stepped in, her expression a mix of urgency and concern. "Alex, we need you now." My heart lurched as I exchanged glances with my family, a silent agreement weighing heavily in the air. Whatever was happening behind those closed doors required us to act to confront whatever fate held for us. As we followed the nurse down the stark corridor, an unsettling truth seeped into my bones. Something was unraveling, and as much as we longed for connection, the threads of our family may only fray tighter as the darkness encroached. The urgent beeping of monitoring equipment echoed in my mind as I felt the pull of Clara beside me, a mixture of alliance and mystery weaving itself into the very fabric of our shared fate. No matter the course we chose next, our next steps would resonate far beyond the confines of these walls into the untouched memories and long-buried fears that lay waiting, desperate for resolution. And yet, as I turned a corner, another text vibrated through my pocket. I slid it open, heart pounding louder than the beeping machines, eyes widening at the chilling words. "They're here!" Those two words fanned the flames of fear within me as I stepped closer to the precipice of an unknown abyss, directly in the face of the impending storm that threatened to rip us apart once more. The fluorescent lights buzzed mercilessly, casting harsh shadows across the sterile corridor. I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins, quickening my breath with every step I took behind the nurse. The last text still lingered in my mind, the words repeating like a drum, drowning out the sterile sounds of the hospital. "They're here." Who were they? And what did it mean for my family? Panic surged as I squeezed my phone tightly in my palm, the steady rise and fall of Clara's breath beside me grounding me, her warmth sparking a stubborn flicker of resolve within the pervasive dread. Yet with every hurried step deeper into the hospital, I felt a gnawing sense of betrayal creeping along the edges of my heart. Did I really know the people I loved? Or were we all just actors in a play where trust was the most fragile prop on the stage? The nurse stopped outside a glass door, her expression serious. "You can go in. But only for a moment." She glanced back, her eyes darting between the four of us. There was a knowing dread in her gaze, a clarity of the emotional stakes we were all facing. My family stepped closer, and as I pushed the door open, the scent of antiseptic hit hard, a harsh reminder of where we were and what hung in the balance. The room contained Clara, lying unconscious, an array of machines surrounding her. Millions of wires trailed from her body to the monitors, their rhythmic beeping underscoring the quiet turmoil inside me. "Clara," I breathed, the word tumbling out as I stepped closer, while my mother crumpled into a nearby chair, covering her mouth with trembling hands, tears spilling over like a torrent released from a dam. My brother hung back, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and disbelief, while Clara's hand lay limp and pale on the crisp white sheets. "Is she?" My brother's voice barely broke through the charged silence. I shook my head. "She is fighting. She has to fight." But the shadows of doubt clawed at the edges of my optimism. What if this was it? What if those eerie messages were a warning rather than a threat? I desperately held onto the frail thread of hope, believing it could intertwine our lives back together if she emerged from this. Sensing my inner turmoil, Clara's fingers twitched slightly, a faint flutter that ignited a pulse of adrenaline through me. I reached out, grasping her hand in mine, feeling the coolness of her skin against my own. "I'm here, Clara. Just keep fighting. Please," I whispered, desperately willing my voice into her subconscious. "We'll get through this together." Moments passed like lifetimes, time suspended as I lost myself in the depths of her tranquil face. It felt as if the world beyond the walls of this room faded away completely, where nothing else mattered but the fragile connection we shared. But then, the harsh reality crashed back in as my phone buzzed again, this time with a call. Reluctantly, I stepped away from Clara's side, casting a glance back at her serene figure before answering. The caller ID displayed a number I didn't recognize. A knot twisted in my stomach as I answered, heart pounding. "Alex," came the voice on the other end, its familiarity sending chills down my spine. "We need to talk." "Who is this?" I snapped, my pulse quickening. The voice was low and measured, dripping with implications. "You don't have the luxury of denial anymore. Your family's problems have ripple effects. Stay away from my family." I interrupted, rage spilling over. How dare they? The nerve of someone hiding behind a curtain of anonymity to threaten us at such a time. "It's too late for that, Alex," the voice continued, unflinching. "You need to make a choice. A life's worth more than a deal worth millions. You need to decide who you can trust in the coming days. Those who walk with you may not be who they seem." The cold weight of the words settled around my heart, squeezing tighter. With furious breaths, I ended the call, sliding my phone back into my pocket. A swell of fear twisted in the pit of my stomach as I returned my gaze to Clara, who seemed utterly vulnerable. Asleep in an unforgiving world. "Alex." Clara's voice cut through the air, strong and commanding. Shock seized me. I turned, watching her arm move slightly, her brow furrowing as if she were stirring from a deep, dark chasm. "Clara!" "Just hold on." I rushed back to her side, heart racing, ready to embrace whatever awareness might greet us. But before I reached her, her eyes shot wide open, clouded with confusion yet shimmering with a startling intensity. She blinked rapidly, her lips moving without sound, and then suddenly, the lights flickered, the machines flared, and chaos erupted around us. For a moment, our eyes met hers, questioning, mine pleading. And before I could wrap my arms around her, something shifted in the air, and all I could hear was, "They're here." The door burst open, and figures spilled in, clad in white coats and scrubs, urgency mingling with desperation in their every movement. I clutched Clara's hand tighter, but the confusion in her eyes was swallowed by the storm gathering outside our walls, threatening to unravel everything we might have found in that fragile moment of connection. As I stood there, the world began to blur again. Who was really on our side, and who was pulling at the strings of our lives from the shadows? While the answers lay just on the horizon, they were shrouded in darkness as I faced the precarious path ahead, one marred by distrust and unforeseen consequences. The question now, would I be able to navigate it without losing myself? The fluorescent lights overhead flickered as the medical team surged into the room, their voices a blend of urgency and authority that resonated against the stark walls. I felt swept up in their flurry, the sound morphing into a whirlwind that spun around Clara and me, drawing us further into the chaos brewing beyond our notice. "Clear the area," one of the doctors ordered, and my heart sank as they jostled into the space, shrouding Clara in a flurry of activity. I felt helpless, my desire to protect her clashing with the suffocating reality that I was merely a spectator in this moment. "Step back," they said, and I could only watch as they surrounded her bed, communicating in rapid bursts I couldn't decipher. Panic raced through my veins, and I wanted to scream as time hung suspended, pushing on my chest as if the very air in the room thickened into a solid mass. Clara's eyes darted, her body tense, as I stepped back instinctively. I could see the fear creeping back into her gaze, a fear I desperately wanted to dissipate. The room grew colder, the intensity of their efforts magnifying my anxiety. I could feel a heartbeat, but it wasn't just mine, it was everyone else in the room, a collective thrum of hope and dread. "Please," I whispered, more to myself than anyone else. "You're going to be okay." I wanted to believe my words, but doubt seeped in like an unwelcome shadow, coiling around my certainty. And then, abruptly, Clara's monitor began to beep erratically, the noise slicing through my chest like a dagger. Emergency lights flashed and alarms blared, unraveling my resolve as I slipped into desperation. I pushed forward, my words barely audible over the chaos. "She needs to wake up. Please, just let her be okay. Alex, you need to step back," someone urged, but I raised my chin instead, a fragile line of defiance igniting deep within. Suddenly, Clara's body convulsed, the monitor screaming in alarm, and instinctually, I reached out again, wrapping my fingers around hers. "Stay with me, Clara. Please." I felt the warmth of her hand stir beneath my grasp, a flicker of life in a sea of uncertainty. In that moment, the world outside slipped away, and it was just her and I in that narrow space between hope and despair. Clara jerked awake, her lips moving but no words emerged, her eyes filled with fear and confusion. Then, as if a string had snapped, she let out a soft, broken sound, a choked gasp that caught in her throat. "Alex," she whispered, each letter trembling on her tongue like a delicate flower in the wind. Tears pricked the corners of my eyes, relief and terror tangled within me as I squeezed her hand tighter. "I'm here, Clara. I'm right here. You're safe. Just focus on me." But as the urgency among the medical team escalated, the looming shadow of the voice continued to echo in my mind, the warning thudding against my chest like an ominous drum. I glanced at the faces surrounding us, laden with purpose, but also laden with uncertainty. Did they have Clara's well-being at heart, or were they playing their own roles in this unfolding drama? I felt the swell of sweat gather at my brow. The crushing weight of helplessness replayed itself like a nightmare, trapping me in ambiguity. "Why did you come back?" I wanted to ask her, needing to understand the threads that had brought us to this moment. "What is it that you know?" But before I could articulate those thoughts, Clara's hand tightened around mine, an unexpected resolve nesting itself in her grip. "Alex, I feel something's wrong. I need to tell you," Clara gasped, her voice barely a whisper above the fray, yet filled with urgency. "Not now, sweetheart," I pleaded, my heart racing against the backdrop of blaring alarms and frantic movements. "Just focus on getting better. You can tell me everything later. My brother shoved his way beside me, eyes wide with frustration. We have to do something. This isn't right. Nothing is right, I countered, feeling the cracks of despair spreading across my heart. I shot him a look that pleaded for silence, for understanding amid the chaos, and the moment lingered, the air thick with unsettled truths and weighed by currents of quiet dread. Clara's eyes searched mine, a reflection tinted with vulnerability and power, the knowledge that whatever she was about to say could shatter our fragile reality. Then, in the very heart of the ruckus, her breath drew unevenly. Alex, before it's too late, my gut twisted as I leaned in, desperate to hear her words. But just then, the doctor next to Clara shouted, "We need to sedate her." "No!" I burst out, terror clawing up my throat as the doctor moved to administer a syringe, ready to pull her into the numbness that came with the haze of medication. But Clara's eyes met mine, piercing through the maelstrom, and in that moment, my reality splintered. "Alex," she rasped, one last defiance shining through the dimness. "The stars, they're falling." And as the room erupted into frenetic movement around us, her message hung in the air, a haunting echo of something greater that loomed beyond our reach, a revelation that may change everything. An unanswered question now danced between us. Would I have the courage to face whatever was to come? The tension in the room heightened, layers of fear and confusion swirling in the charged atmosphere as Clara's words cut through the chaos like a knife. The urgent beeping of the machines pounded in my ears, but her declaration reverberated deeper, striking a chord that resonated through my very core. I could feel time slow down around us, and every heartbeat seemed like an eternity as I struggled to decipher the meaning behind her cryptic warning. "Alex." Clara's voice shook, but her grip remained surprisingly strong. "We have to get away. I mean far away." The physician, comprised of clinical calmness, answered my rising dread with an indifference that stung, adjusting wires and monitoring screens without a word of reassurance. I wanted to scream at them, to throw myself between them and Clara. I could almost feel the walls closing in, pressing against my lungs, suffocating me in atrophy. "I can't. I won't let them do this," I shouted, my desperation bubbling over into an unfiltered rage as I pointed to the syringe glistening in the doctor's hand. "You don't understand. She knows something important." But Clara's eyes, oh those deep pools of fear, were narrowing, reading the space around us, sensing the movements that were just out of reach beyond the ruckus. "The stars, Alex." "The stars," she forced the words out, each one a feeble exhalation weighted by urgency. "They're connected to us. They know what is happening to our family." At the mention of family, the ground shifted beneath my feet, reality folding in on itself. The shadows of our recent history surfaced, the revelation that our family history was riddled with secrets, closed doors, and forbidden whispers. I remembered the day Mom had sat us down, a hurricane brewing behind her weary eyes, warning us about what had been hidden, the legacy we were meant to inherit. But what was it that Clara believed? Was she suggesting that something beyond our grasp, something more cosmic, was at play in this twisted saga? "Clara, please," I begged, leaning closely, blocking out everything else, imploring her with every ounce of sincerity I had left. "What are you trying to warn me about? You need to be clear." "There's someone I met when I was gone," she said, each word effortless but breaking like shattered glass. He told me we would face a choice." She faltered, her breath hitching as fear and pain played across her features. "We can't trust everyone, Alex. Not everyone wants us to be safe." The world outside that room faded into the background, replaced by the gravity of her statement. As the doctors continued their persistent efforts, I strained to adapt, feeling the weight of her revelation enforcing an inexplicable sense of unease. "What choice? What does this mean?" I pressed, as a chill raced across my skin. I can't explain everything now, but we need to remember the stars. Follow them. Her eyes locked onto mine, imbuing me with an intensity 1D never experienced before. In that tethered moment, I felt a flicker of belief ignite within me just below the layers of dread that loomed and threatened to suffocate. Then, with all the chaos around us, I noticed a small figure dressed in scrubs standing just outside the doorway, someone who stood watch, hesitating amid the commotion. My heart raced as I glanced over, catching a glimpse of familiar features. It was Mia, an old friend from childhood, someone I hadn't seen in years. Her eyes locked onto mine, filled with an understanding that seemed to connect her deeply to Clara's plight. "Alex," she whispered, motioning for me to come closer as if the world around us had fallen away, dissolving into irrelevance. "I can help." Before I could pivot toward her, a sudden crash erupted from down the hallway, galvanizing the chaos around Clara into a full-blown emergency. A commotion pulsed through the medical staff, heads turned. I saw fear reflected back in the eyes of the team. "Stay back, everyone," a voice commanded. "We need to secure the hallway." "Alex, we don't have much time," Clara urged, her voice trembling, breaking the spell of attention as my heart throttled against the chaos. "What do I do?" I begged her, my world spiraling into uncertainty as everything I knew seemed to blur around me, hope conflicting against despair. "I don't know," she confessed, her voice cracking with emotion. "Just trust me." "Find the stars." Another shattering sound pierced the reality, and I swung toward the doorway just in time to see two figures rush into the room, darkness spilling into the bright white space as they forced their presence upon us with palpable danger. "Get away from her," I yelled, pushing against the surge of panic now rattling against my chest, and as Clara's grip on my hand tightened, I came to realize one undeniable truth. Everything around us was unspooling, and soon, old bonds would be tested where allegiances lay hidden, and fates intertwined. With a sense of dread curling around my heart like a serpent, I turned to Clara, who now looked more vulnerable than ever. But in the face of unyielding terror, a feeling surged through me. Whatever awaited us beyond this moment could either bind us to an unraveling family legacy or sever ties that had once intertwined our destinies. And in the very crux of this tumult, a chilling truth settled in. The stars were indeed calling, and whether through light or darkness, we would find ourselves tumbling toward an inevitable collision with our past. The chaos surged around us like a storm, yet in that moment time suspended. Clara's grip on my hand tightened as fear radiated from her. I could feel the tremors in her fingers, echoing the tremors in my heart. The two shadows that invaded our space bore faces I recognized, worn by time yet hauntingly familiar. They were the individuals I had seen lurking in the corners of my past, figures cloaked in secrets, just waiting for a moment to strike again. "Get away from her," I shouted, a combination of fear and protective instinct surging through me. I had promised to keep my family safe, no matter the cost. The figures exchanged glances, smirking as if to mock my defiance. I could barely comprehend what they were saying, but the words seeped into my awareness, laden with a threatening tone. "You shouldn't have gotten involved, Alex." Their voices dripped with a malice that sent shivers through my spine. "Clara, stay close," I urged, instinctively positioning my body to shield her, my back to the intruders. Underneath the chaos of the moment, I felt the familiar presence of fear ignite a flame of resolve within me. These figures might have tainted our past, but they would not script our future. "Alex," Clara's voice urged, her eyes wide and filled with something that resembled panic. "You need to listen. They want to take me." And if you don't fight back. Before she could finish her sentence, the lights flickered again. In that chaotic haze, a tumult of memories washed over me, flooding my mind with the reality of our family, broken yet resilient. The scars of betrayal, the looming shadows of abandonment, all twisted together in a tapestry of pain. But among those shadows flickered embers of hope, a reminder of what family meant when it was fractured. "No!" I shouted, a declaration that emerged as if igniting a fuse within me. I refused to bow to these remnants of our past. I would not allow them to rewrite our family story as they had before. The urgency of Clara's warning wrapped around my throat like a vice, and I turned to face them, fury blazing in my chest. One of the figures stepped forward, a smirk twisted on their lips, but there was something else behind their eyes. Fear. I saw it flash there, a flicker of uncertainty. Perhaps everything that tethered us to our family's legacy was more powerful than their schemes. Whatever darkness they embodied, it paled in comparison to the light we could reclaim together. "We will not allow you to take her again," I roared, standing tall before them, every ounce of resolve flooding my veins. "You lost your grip on us the moment I chose family over fear." Clara's fingers tightened around mine, driving strength back into my soul as a spark ignited between us, a shared understanding that now marked our path forward. Then, without warning, I felt the tension shift. The air thickened as if a battle line had been drawn. The leading figure opened their mouth, words poised on the edge of malicious intent, but before they could unleash whatever threat they harbored, Clara drew in a sharp breath, the empathy that defined our bond radiating through our connected hands. "Enough," she commanded, her voice slicing through the air with unexpected power, pulling every specter of doubt into the crescendo of her will. "You think you can come back here and destroy us? You don't know what we've become." The nurses froze, their gazes darting back and forth between us and the intruders, uncertainty reflecting in their eyes. It was a moment of defiance woven into something more than survival. It was reclaiming our story, the one we wished to write on our own terms. The figures hesitated, affected by something, the fire igniting from inside our hearts. Perhaps in our newfound unity lay the weapons. They could not prepare for the unbreakable bond of family rising above threats, beyond heartbreak. But just as the tension began to tilt in our favor, a team of security personnel burst into the room. Their presence flickered like a lightning bolt in the storm, solid and authoritative. "These two need to leave, now," one of the officers shouted, stepping between us and the looming threat, as they positioned themselves to shield Clara and me from the encroaching shadows. As the intruders retreated, anger and disbelief etched on their faces, I couldn't help but feel as if a great burden was lifted, even as emotions churned within me. The battle would not end here. I could sense it, a lingering presence that would haunt our family unless we severed the ties that bound us to our past. "Follow the stars," Clara whispered, her voice rising gently above the chaos. "If we want to win this battle, we have to understand the truth and each other." Her earnestness broke down the last walls I held, leaving me bare before her, and at that moment, clarity washed over me like a beckoning light. I realized that Clara had returned not just to warn me but also to guide me. Together we could delve into our family's murky legacy, and we would emerge victorious as a united front. "Let us go," I replied resolutely, my voice firm with newfound purpose. Clara squeezed my hand, and for the first time in ages, I believed that something beautiful glimmered ahead. As the room cleared, and the echo of our past shadows lingered just outside the door's frame, I glanced at Clara. With fierce determination, we stepped out into the unknown, ready to confront the darkness lying ahead, armed with every piece of our story and the starry map that had guided us back home. Together, we would expose the truths we had buried, heal the fractures that had long masked our family's destiny, and redefine who we were as a unit. "We'll always find our way back," I promised, my voice like a lighthouse in the night, illuminating the shadows that lurked beyond us. And just as those words left my lips, a quiet certainty nestled in my heart, igniting a flame that would guide us forward, whatever the future may hold. And as we stepped away from the encroaching darkness, the journey to reclaim our legacy began, knowing this time, unlike the stars, we wouldn't burn out, but instead, we would blaze bright together,